Happy Friday, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. I'm Lee-Jun in Seoul. Coming up on today's edition of Business Daily. With private consumption having rebounded recently, the government says the economy may be on a solid recovery track, while some say it's too early to be certain. Chinese internet giant Tencent Holdings posts a near 70% jump in its quarterly net profit, while the U.S. House of Representatives passed President Donald Trump's flagship tax reform bill. These stories and more coming right up. The Korean government is feeling more optimistic about the economy. In its monthly assessment of local economic conditions, the finance ministry said it's confident that the economy is on a steady recovery path thanks to a rebound in consumption. Our Kim Ji-yeon starts us off.
In its monthly Green Book released on Friday, the Ministry of Strategy and Finance said the Korean economy is on a steady recovery path on the back of rising exports and a rebound in consumption. The rosy projection is in stark contrast to the ministry's outlook in its last Green Book that stated the recovery was shaky, mainly due to sluggish domestic consumption. The Green Book for November points to improved consumer sentiment on rising demand for premium smartphones and gift purchases during the Chuseok Korean Thanksgiving holiday, as well as during the Korea Sale Festa, a month-long nationwide discount event. Last month, consumer sentiment rose 1.5 points from the previous month to 109.2, the highest since July, on expectations the tourism and retail sectors will recover as relations between Korea and China improve after the brawl over Seoul's deployment of the THAAD anti-missile system. It also shows money that would have been spent on real estate has instead been directed toward durable goods, following recent measures aimed at countering housing speculation. Sales of durable goods have risen for 2 consecutive quarters after they dipped during the January to March period compared to the previous quarter. Critics have argued it's too early to be certain whether domestic consumption will continue to rebound this year and the next, pointing to the long-term effects of government measures and the amount of taxes it's expected to collect to boost its people-centered economy initiative. Starting next year, the government will be implementing increases in the minimum wage, childcare support, and the basic pension system. This comes as Korea's jobless rate fell to 3.2% for October, a 10-month low, while youth unemployment dipped to its worst level in close to 2 decades. Kim Ji-yeon, Business Daily.
Let's now get a check on how the markets fared here in Seoul today. For more, we connect with our Lee Ju-young on the phone. So Ju-young, tell us more about today's market action.
Yes, June. At the closing bell, the benchmark index actually went down 0.03% to end at 2533.99, while sentiment wasn't bad with heavy buying from foreigners. The junior Kosdaq also ended lower for the first time in 8 days, falling 0.56% as institutions offloaded shares. On the foreign exchange counter, the Korean won strengthened yet again at 1,097.51 against the greenback. Foreigners bought roughly $500 million worth of shares today, with a heavy emphasis on tech shares. Market kingpin Samsung Electronics inched up 0.07%, while major chipmaker SK Hynix also rose by 0.61%.
Well, let's now talk about the foreign exchange market. The Korean won has strengthened quite a lot compared to the beginning of this year.
Yes, you're right. From what was about 1,200 won against the dollar in the start of 2017, the exchange rate dropped below the 1,100 won mark as of today. Experts say the strong won is largely due to the country's improving economic indicators, with Korea's third quarter growth seen at 3.6% compared to the same time last year. Heavy foreign buying on the stock market and robust exports also contributed to the won's appreciation. Experts add that while the won is set to continue its climb for the time being, some foreign exchange authorities say that the pace may be a little too fast and a close monitoring of the market is necessary. This has been Lee Ju-young for Business Daily.
The Fair Trade Commission is investigating the refund policies for several third-party hotel booking companies. This after customer complaints that many of these companies were offering no refunds and charging users to modify their booking information. Our Elliot Kim has the story.
With third-party booking sites gaining traction in the Korean market, some of their policies are surprising customers. In April, an office worker made hotel reservations in Spain on Booking.com. But because of work, his initial plan to travel during the extended Chuseok holiday period had to be canceled. To his surprise, he discovered that the booking was non-refundable.
If you have 4 months, you can definitely resell it. It will sell during that period. It's the Chuseok holiday season, not the off-season.
With overseas travel booming, hotel booking sites are being cast in the limelight. But there are some terms and conditions that are being seen as unfair. Booking.com isn't the only site that sells non-refundable reservations, but it, along with Agoda, Hotels.com, and Expedia, have all had to revise refund policies that were judged by the FTC to be unfair.
It's unfair to uniformly impose the entire cost of accommodation as a penalty. It imposes an excessive burden on the consumer.
The FTC also points out some of the terms and conditions outlined by the booking sites were confusing and led customers to make mistakes. Booking.com and Hotels.com had provisions stating the companies took no responsibility for inaccurate information on their sites, while Agoda's policies prevented customers from seeking compensation for damages. The FTC announced that customers can now receive refunds if they choose to, and that the other unfair policies have been revised or removed. Elliot Kim, Business Daily.
As Black Friday nears, the Korea Consumer Agency has created a guide on the use of credit card chargeback services. Now, chargebacks are designed to protect consumers in the cases of fraudulent credit card use with either lost or stolen cards. The agency said it received 823 cases of complaints and disputes this year through October on its cross-border transaction consumer portal. Refusal to offer cancellations, refunds, or exchanges accounted for 37% of all registered cases. Of the total, 35% of the cases may be solvable through a credit card chargeback by submitting receipts, order statements, and emails within 120 days of the transaction settlement. The KCA also noted that chargeback services can be used not only for fraud, but also tax refunds for hotel and car reservations. Video game enthusiasts, developers, and vendors from all corners of the world are in Busan for a major exhibition. Local companies are pinning their hopes on the global event to help turn things around as the Korean gaming industry faced some headwinds recently. Our Park Hee-jun takes us to GStar 2017.
For the Korean gaming industry, the last 10 years have been called a lost decade. The past 2 administrations imposed new regulations on video games, one of them being the so-called shutdown law, which restricted player age and playing time to fight computer game addiction. And this year, things were especially tough with China's de facto sanctions on South Korea over the THAAD issue, effectively banning Korean games in a market that accounts for over 40% of the local industry's exports. But the new administration is taking a different approach to gaming, and with a thaw in relations with China, game makers see business getting better.
The gaming industry is aiming to recover its recent losses through GStar, one of the world's biggest game conventions, and this year's event is expected to be the largest yet.
The annual GStar convention began Thursday in the southern port city of Busan. More than 600 game companies from 30 different countries are taking part, and it's expected to attract hundreds of thousands of gamers and business visitors during its 4-day run.
This is the biggest gaming event of the year. We want our booth to be a place where we can meet our users and interact with each other through our games.
The highlight of this year's GStar is esports. Korea is one of the world's biggest markets for professional gaming, and here, visitors can watch live online competitions among teams from several different countries. China's biggest game distributor, Tencent, has sent an exceptionally large group to GStar to look for new business opportunities with Korean companies. Plenty of other Chinese game makers have come too, in contrast to Beijing's recent restrictions on doing business with South Korea. Although it is uncertain how fast the local gaming industry will get back on its feet, GStar is expected to play a part in the recovery through new promotions, business deals, and by connecting the game makers with the players. Park Hee-jun, Business Daily, Busan.
Final preparations for the 2018 Pyeongchang Winter Olympics are being put in place. Other than the venues for competitors and spectators, a convenient and reliable transportation system is crucial, especially as Pyeongchang is in a relatively remote part of Korea. And our Cha Sang-mi tells us how to get to and around the Alpine city.
With the Olympics only a matter of weeks away, one of the fastest ways to get to Pyeongchang is to take this high-speed train. This was a test run for the new KTX line that will open to the public in December. Some 1.5 million people, including athletes and spectators from around the world, will descend on Pyeongchang for the Olympics early next year. However, since the competition venues are over 270 kilometers away from Korea's main gateway, Incheon International Airport, having excellent transport links is essential. That's why Korea has been upgrading rail, road, and air links in time for the Games. Introducing the new KTX first. Jinbu Station is the main station for the Pyeongchang Mountain Cluster, where all the snow sports as well as the opening and closing ceremonies will be held.
16 trains a day will depart from Incheon International Airport to Pyeongchang. 8 of those will stop at Seoul Station, the rest will be non-stop. It takes 110 minutes to get from the airport to Jinbu Station on a non-stop train.
Apart from those, there are another 35 trains a day that will depart from Seoul Station. Getting to the venues for ice sports at the Gangneung Coastal Cluster will take just 16 minutes by train from Jinbu to Gangneung Station. For those choosing to travel by car or bus, new expressways have been built, connecting Korea's major cities to Pyeongchang.
The second Yeongdong Expressway opened to complement the existing Yeongdong Expressway. Since expressways now connect east and west, drivers can now take a different route. This is definitely a groundbreaking change for the local traffic network.
Apart from the official opening of Terminal 2 at Incheon International Airport in January, the committee has been working on the regional Yangyang Airport to reduce congestion on the roads. These transportation links got us to Pyeongchang and Gangneung, but how do we go that extra step and get to the competition venues?
Those coming by rail or road can take the spectator shuttle bus to the Olympic venues. The distance from the transportation hub to the venues is 10 to 20 minutes.
For those opting to drive, the Pyeongchang Organizing Committee has almost completed 8 large parking lots. Although preparations are going well, there are many pitfalls that the organizers must be wary of, from the risk of heavy snow to extra traffic during the Lunar New Year vacation, which falls during the Games. Traffic volume is expected to peak between February 15th and 18th as Koreans crisscross the nation to be with their family for one of Korea's largest national holidays.
Assuming the maximum number of people who visit the Olympics will be around 1 million, we are going to see a roughly 11% rise in traffic volume in Gangwon-do province. We need to prepare with this figure in mind.
The winter weather is also unpredictable. Gangwon-do province is known in Korea for its heavy snowfall during January and February.
When a heavy snowfall watch is issued, we will mobilize all our prepared human resources and equipment to remove snow from the roads.
Experts say that considering the scale of the event, Korea's public and private sectors have to come together to ensure a successful Olympic Games. Cha Sang-mi, Business Daily.
Singapore has officially banned all trade with North Korea in accordance with relevant UN Security Council resolutions. In a letter to traders last week, Singapore Customs declared that no commercially traded goods would be allowed to come in or go to the regime as of November 8th. No commercial goods that are not listed on UN sanctions may be allowed, but they will require a permit from the customs agency. Violators of the ban will be fined up to 100,000 Singaporean dollars, or roughly 74,000 US dollars, or 3 times the value of the goods, and face up to 2 years in prison. The penalties will also scale up for repeat offenders. Singapore was considered North Korea's 7th largest trading partner, with total volume seen at 13 million US dollars last year. A new map by the European Union shows North Korea is the country under the most EU sanctions. The EU sanctions map, which is available to view online, is designed to help users find up-to-date information on the various sanctions being implemented by Brussels. It shows the countries under punitive measures, the specifics of the sanctions, and even a list of individuals and entities subject to EU and UN sanctions. 33 countries are marked on the map for illegal activities, such as the proliferation of weapons of mass destruction and terrorism. You can check the map out for yourself by going to sanctionsmap.eu. More than a dozen countries, including the UK and Canada, have pledged to phase out traditional coal power plants by 2030. They aim to replace coal with energy from renewable sources and hope to get more countries to phase out the fossil fuel. Our Park Ji-won reports.
Delegates from 20 countries and the U.S. states of Washington and Oregon joined together on Thursday in Germany at the UN Climate Conference to form an international alliance for the global phase-out of coal by 2030. The so-called Powering Past Coal Alliance aims to end the use of fossil fuels and to share technologies to reduce carbon emissions.
So it feels like a very important tipping point to be bold and ambitious, and I think this alliance is exactly that. It's not about telling people what to do, it's about celebrating the benefits of what is possible and helping all of us achieve these very big steps for the sake of our planet and for the sake of generations to come.
Coal is literally choking our cities and our people. Around the world, we see close to 1 million deaths a year from air pollution created by burning coal. Not only is there a human cost, there is also a huge economic cost, totaling billions of dollars a year.
The countries in the alliance aims to increase their use of renewable and green energy to fill the void from the non-use of fossil fuels. Britain, for example, has already invested a lot in clean energy. Nearly a third of all UK electricity came from renewable sources, such as wind and hydroelectric power, in the second 3 months of this year. Canada produced more than 2/3 of its electricity from renewables in 2015 and aims to increase the portion further. However, major coal-burning nations such as China, India, Russia, and the U.S. have not yet joined, with the exception of the 2 U.S. states of Washington and Oregon. The alliance hopes to have 50 countries signed up by the next major UN conference in Poland next year. Park Ji-won, Business Daily.
And time now for a look through some important global business news from the week with our Eunice Kim joining us in the studio today. Hello, Eunice.
Hello.
All right, so you have your eyes on China's economy today as relations between Seoul and Beijing looks to be softening, and the Chinese economy seems to be softening as well.
Yeah, you're right. This week's economic indicators are showing that softening outlook, including industrial production as well as investment, pointing to China's willingness to slow down for more balanced growth. This as at least one Chinese company grabbed headlines by the horns with its blockbuster Q3 growth. Take a look.
A runway third quarter report from a tech company on Thursday that smashed through the most rosy-eyed estimates. A 57% rise in on-year operating profit, a 67% jump in overall on-year revenues, helped by an 84% surge in smartphone game revenues. That company, Chinese giant Tencent. Listed on the Hong Kong Stock Exchange, shares of Tencent roared on the news, hitting a fresh record high Thursday. Its market cap has more than doubled in the past year to some $470 billion, putting Asia's most valuable stock ever closer to Facebook's $520 billion market value. But of course, Tencent is not alone. Last week's Singles' Day shopping bonanza became a global one as U.S. retailers got on the bandwagon. Alibaba managed to break through last year's sales record at the halfway point, in the end generating an eye-watering $25 billion in sales, with 90% of the transactions said to have been mobile. Alibaba and Tencent are two Chinese players competing in America's stock market via IPOs of companies they help bankroll. In fact, the initial public offerings of Chinese companies in the U.S. market has been strong this year. Nasdaq's listing service says there have been 20 so far, with another 12 on file. A majority player in 2017's stronger year in IPOs in terms of volume, according to Ernst & Young. This as the wheels of the greater Chinese economy look to be slowing, in line with President Xi Jinping's stated priority on balanced growth. Its October report showed a cooled growth momentum in industrial production, fixed asset investment, and retail sales, all three coming below market forecasts. Although they're still at rates enviable to many of its peers, in particular the slowdown in fixed asset investment suggested a tighter lending climate beginning to affect property investments, which grew 5.6%, down from more than 9% the month before. As China shifts from a production-reliant model of growth to one driven by services and consumption, overseas companies are eyeing the major economy once again to position their growth in the long term. Volkswagen Group earlier this week becoming the latest automaker to pledge EVs in China. It announced it's earmarking $11.8 billion to launch a total of 15 models in all-electric and plug-in hybrids in the next few years. That's compliant with the state's strict environmental regulations.
All right, let's turn our eyes to Washington next, where a landmark tax reform effort has passed its first of many hurdles.
Yeah, absolutely. This is the beginning of a long stretch ahead. The tax reform bill, which includes a sizable corporate tax rate cut to 20% from 35%, is something many investors have been keeping tabs on, with implications for the stock market as well. On Thursday, U.S. time, the GOP majority House of Representatives was able to pass their version of the bill in a vote of 227 in favor versus 205 against. Now, the Senate is working on its own version as well, with significant differences. The most controversial, perhaps, is that it tacks on a health care provision to repeal an Obamacare mandate that requires all Americans to have health insurance. The two bills will have to be reconciled in the weeks forthcoming, with Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin campaigning for a final bill to be sent to the White House next month, that's December, for President Donald Trump to sign.
And of course, the talk at the water cooler has been this Da Vinci painting that a bidder took at an unprecedented price, I hear.
Oh my goodness, $500 million, $450 million was the final price, including fees. Not much is known about the anonymous buyer, other than that he or she was supposedly very calm when putting up the $450 million bid that ended a Christie's bidding war. The work, titled Salvator Mundi, or Savior of the World, is said to be the last known authentic Leonardo da Vinci work left in private hands, with less than 20 of his paintings believed to be survived. The winning bid was more than quadruple what dealers were estimating, and more than double the previous record holder for an auctioned art piece. The unprecedented price, now tied to the piece of historic art, has invited scrutiny from opinion holders, both expert and non-experts. The portrait of Jesus Christ, which is estimated to have been painted around the year 1500, had moved around the hands of European royals for hundreds of years before surfacing in the public back in 1958, during which, get this, it was auctioned for just $125 because of its shoddy cleaning and overpainting, but that was fixed in the years following to be authenticated by Da Vinci scholars.
Well, it was a very pricey portrait indeed, but then I'm sure for the bidder it was very worth the money, right?
Well, I sure hope so.
All right, thank you so much for coming in today.
You bet.
And that wraps it up for today and this week. Thanks so much for watching. We'll be back next week with more at the same time, same place for your Business Daily. Until then, goodbye.